I recall. Danger, important information, dead ahead. Do not listen. Yogi Berra was known to have said, baseball is 90% mental. The other half is physical. While you're trying to figure out the math out on that, think about what someone once said. People are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. While you're pondering those two sayings, think about this one. What you believe is what you become. Now, keeping in mind the human factor in all three, I believe them to be generally true, Yogi's math notwithstanding. The question is, can I prove it? Is this type of logic just a little fairy dust sprinkled over magic thinking, sugar-coated with wishful thoughts? I like the story of the young man who was convinced by his teachers to take the Scholastic Aptitude Test, now called the Scholastic Assessment Test, or SAT, even though he had no plans to attend college, nor was he particularly good in school. When his scores came back, everyone, including the young man, was astonished. His score was an astounding 1,500 out of a possible 1,600. No one could believe he was capable of such a score. Upon receiving the score, the young man began to seriously consider going to college and applied himself to study. His grades improved, and eventually he went to college and earned a degree. However, years later, it was discovered that due to a glitch in the system, he had been sent the wrong score on his test. In actuality, he had scored a 700. Instead of being in the top scores, he was in the bottom. But he had convinced himself by the higher score that he was capable of much more, and as a result, he did better. May be referred to by psychologists as the Pygmalion effect. Solomon wrote in Proverbs 23:7 in the King James Version, "For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, saith he to thee, but his heart is not with thee." In the New American Standard it says, "For as he thinks within himself, so is he. He says to you, eat and drink, but his heart is not with you." In the New King James Version, it says, "For as he thinks in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, he says to you, but his heart is not with you." You have no doubt heard this quoted, "As a man thinks in his heart, so is he," which is akin to what you think about, you become. Scholars have some interesting thoughts on that verse and its translation, but the general thought by many is just that. What we dwell on within is what we become eventually. Do you doubt that? Let's consider for a moment why it is that Solomon spent so much time in the first 9 chapters of Proverbs telling his son to choose wisely who to be around, what to pursue, and why he should do so. Think about why Paul would tell those in Corinth in 1 Corinthians 15:33, "Do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits." Muse for a while on Paul's admonition to the church at Philippi in Philippians 4, verse 8. "Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue, and if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things." If these aren't sufficient, ponder for a while on what James says in James chapter 1, verses 5 through 8 in the New King James Version. "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith, without doubting. For he who doubts is like a wave of the sea driven and tossed by the wind. For let not that man suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways." Sadly, we can become the result of stinkin' thinking, as one fellow put it. We dwell on the negatives. We watch the news and are convinced that everything in the world is negative and become cynical in our thoughts. We occupy our minds with how bad things are and fail to make the connection between those thoughts and our poor attitudes, our poor outlook, even our poor health. Many years ago, as my mother slipped into the darkness of dementia, I began to pursue what it would take to maintain and even improve my memory. What I discovered through taking a memory course was that everyone, and let me say that again, everyone has a remarkable memory. In the class, the instructor relayed how he was able to take every student and show them they, too, could develop their memory to exceptional heights. I was convinced by what I was told and what he was able to do with my memory capabilities. The biggest obstacle, and the one that I have encountered in the years since when I've tried to convince others of their potential, they don't believe it. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, I have a bad memory, or I can't do that when it comes to remembering things. As long as one dwells on that negative thinking and disbelief, they will never overcome. As one thinks in their heart, so are they. The difference between the one who can and the one who can't is far too often a matter of attitude. Aren't you glad you ignored that warning at the beginning and didn't listen to this dangerous information? Because if you hadn't, you would never have discovered that you don't have to be stuck in the ruts of negative thinking, a pessimistic outlook, and the general malaise of life. And those are our thoughts for today.